Hello, everybody. My name is Tia Butts, and it's 5 o'clock, actually a little after 5 o'clock, so thanks for hanging tight with us here in Napa Valley, which means it's time for our online interactive web show called 5 o'clock Somewhere. Woohoo! Time to toast, guys. Grab your glass.
Cheers. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a great show for you tonight, which is being brought to you by our wine sponsor, which is Toomey. And Toomey's Sauvignon Blanc is in our glasses tonight. It's delicious, refreshing. I know some of you out there are still dealing with snow and all kinds of crazy weather, but here today, we're trying to cool off. It's about 80 degrees here in Napa Valley, so it's been a bit of a crazy day. My name is Tia Butts, and I believe a little bit later our co-host Christine Trice will be joining us as well via webcam, but also in studio with us, Gustavo Gonzalez of Mira Winery here in Napa, and we also have with him the Director of Operations, Tom Kauchik. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
And, you know, many of you know that Johnny Depp played a pirate in many movies. He even owns a winery, but I tell you, Gustavo, he's got nothing on Gustavo, and I'm going to tell you why in a few moments. But first, we are going to talk to Dave McIntyre, who is joining us live via webcast, and you're going to be able to tweet your questions to us at Tooth Social or at 5 o'clock, beginning with the number 5. That way we can be sure to get any of your questions answered from any of our guests. We want to hear from you, so be sure to tweet us. We'll be watching for your tweets, and Susan Quinn will be popping in to share those with you. So, as I said, wine is now produced in all 50 states, and the number of wineries has quadrupled. So there are wines made everywhere, and some of them are quite good, but you might not realize anything about them or hear much about them, because most of the wines cover mainstream media today are wines that are generally from California, Oregon, or Washington. Now, Dave McIntyre, who is a wine writer at Washington Post, is also one of the co-founders of something called Drink Local Wine. And Dave, thanks for joining us tonight from Baltimore, Maryland.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tia. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I see we also now have joining us Christine Trice, who is our other host of 5 o'clock Somewhere, live via webcam. Hi, Christine.
Hi there.
Terrific. So, Dave, tell us, why did you start Drink Local Wine?
Well, I was talking and having several conversations and email conversations with a friend of mine, Jeff Siegel in Dallas, who writes a blog called The Wine Curmudgeon.
And actually, he's been on our show before. I didn't know if you knew that, but Jeff was one of our guests, and he talked a little bit about value wines.
He mentioned that, and he mentioned that he had a great time. But he and I were talking about how there were great wines being made in Virginia and Texas, where he was, that were not getting any attention in the wine stream media, as we called it. And we figured that we would try to change that by creating a website, drinklocalwine.com, where we would link to articles and blog posts about wines from around here, wherever here happens to be. Because publications like Wine Advocate or Wine Spectator or Wine Enthusiast don't really have space. Print publications don't have space to talk about Virginia wine or Texas wine. And because they have to do the Brunello article every year, or the Burgundy article, or the California Chardonnay, or the Napa Cabernet article, and they have limited space. But we noticed that a number of bloggers were writing about their trips on the weekend to a local winery and saying, wow, this is really good. And we thought that that was a little genre that we could highlight there and focus attention on that. And we did what we called Regional Wine Week, where we asked bloggers and wine columnists and other writers to write about something local for 1 week in October of 2008 when we started this. And it sort of caught on. We got some interest, and a number of people did that. And then the next year, the people from the Texas Agriculture Department, who were promoting the local wine industry, approached Jeff and said, this is a great idea, let's do a conference. So that started the idea of doing an annual conference where we focus on one wine region or state a year from what we call the other 47, not California, not Oregon, not Washington, but to highlight the growth of the wine industry throughout the country. And we've done Texas, Virginia, Missouri. Last year we were in Denver to focus on Colorado wines, and this weekend we'll be in Baltimore to focus on Maryland wines.
That's great. That's exciting. So how many regional wineries are there in the United States right now? Do you know? Do you have a figure?
Well, I maybe have a round estimate. At the turn of the millennium, as we like to say, in about 2000, there were approximately 2,000 wineries in the United States. Now there are about 8,000. So the growth in the number of wineries is really, really dramatic. And a lot of that growth in the number of wineries is outside the West Coast. And it's people, for whatever reasons, they have land, they have money they need to lose, they have whatever, a large fortune they want to make into a small fortune because they want to live the winery lifestyle. But increasingly there are people who are really committed to it and wanting to make a quality wine and going out and finding good sites and saying, well, I have to be in California where it's $300,000 an acre. I can buy land here, and because I've got the slopes, I've got the soil, I've got the sun aspect, and I learn how to make wines. So that growth has been very dramatic, and I think a lot of people also are focusing, consumers are becoming aware of and appreciating the fact that local wines can be fun, and wineries are fun to visit, and most importantly, the wines are getting better. Sometimes very good. Not always, but sometimes very good, and the overall quality is improving, which is the main thing.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think most of us around the country have sort of built our palate largely on California wines, and maybe even Oregon and Washington. On the East Coast, of course, a little bit more European palate. So what should we be looking for in regional wines? Because I'm assuming that they're a little bit different taste profile than we're used to.
They are, and one of the complaints that I hear frequently is that, Virginia makes some good wines, but I can get a good California wine for $20 and in this Virginia wine. And I think, while that's true to some extent, Virginia wines do tend to be fairly expensive. So are a lot of California wines. And if you were to take the better wines from Virginia or Maryland or Pennsylvania or New York and put them in a brown bag against similarly priced wines from California or Oregon or Washington, you might decide that you like the West Coast wine better. And that's fine. But you really, when you do it that way, and you take away the prejudice of, oh my gosh, it's a local wine, you kind of have to admit that some of these are really in the ballpark and on the same quality level. And to say that they're not California wine, well, I think producers out here would say, well, yeah, that's true. This is a Virginia expression or a New York expression.
Sure. Well,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The quality is great. Are there some sort of, though, indigenous varieties, that maybe you would find in Michigan or Alabama, or things that we're not used to seeing that are different varieties that we should look at and try? Like, for example, I'm from the Northeast, and we vacationed recently in Acadia National Park in Maine with my family, and on the way, we bought some blueberry wine, which blueberry wine is really, I couldn't compare it to anything I've tasted in California. I mean, it's made from blueberries, just like, pineapple wine in Hawaii, or something along those lines. But definitely there was something pleasant about it, with the right food or the right occasion. I mean, it did taste strongly of blueberries. But are there other sort of indigenous, unique grapes maybe, and things that might be more interesting and would perhaps entice people to try other wines that they might not otherwise?
Well, definitely. And you're right that fruit wines are big here on the East Coast, and there are some very good ones from blueberry. I've had nice blueberry wines from New Hampshire, New Jersey, and Florida. I've had some from native grapes varieties that you wouldn't have heard of in California necessarily, like Diamond or Concord or Delaware. There are certainly the French-American hybrids like Cheval Blanc, Chambourcin, which makes a nice sort of Beaujolais-style red. The real exciting work out here now is in vinifera. You are at least aware of, if not very familiar with, but they have a different expression because of the soils out here. It's definitely a more humid climate, and that has been the major challenge in the mid-Atlantic region, is dealing with the humidity and the water content. And I've had winemakers here say, well, our water comes from the sky. In California, it comes from the irrigation hose. And so water management, and I know you have two winemakers sitting there who are probably thinking of the last couple of rainy vintages that you've had. But water management is definitely a different question here on the East Coast than it is on the West Coast. But you have also in cooler climates like New York's Finger Lakes, wonderful Rieslings.
Yeah.
Very nice Cabernet Franc. Some nice Pinot Noir growing up there. In Michigan's Upper Mission Peninsula, also Riesling. You know, the climate is moderated by the Great Lakes. You have wonderful Riesling, Pinot Blanc, Germanic type varieties up there. In Virginia, Viognier is very popular among the whites, Rhone-style whites. You have also Cabernet Franc has been very popular, but Bordeaux red varieties are really coming on strong because they're finding sites on the mountains with slopes and granite or limestone soils where the grapes can ripen really well. And they're doing a much better job because they're learning the viticulture, the vines are getting some age, and a lot of things are going really well. So you'll have other varieties like Petit Verdot is very strong in Virginia and Maryland, even as a varietal wine, whereas in California that's mostly a blend if they have it. Sorry, go ahead.
Our lovely Vanna White, which is our CEO of Toot Sweet Susan Quinn, is here with a Twitter question.
I have a brain too.
No, I didn't mean it that way.
This is true. I know. I'm just giving you a problem.
I know.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, we do have a Twitter question for you, Dave.
Okay.
So, live from Twitter, they are asking what's going on with your event and when is it?
Yes, we're going to get to that, but go ahead and tell them.
The event is this Saturday, April 13 in Baltimore, and we started kind of a little bit wonky. We have 3 panel discussions association. So we'll be discussing the history of Maryland wine, what grows well in Maryland and whether it's along the mountains or along the Chesapeake Bay, because that's the different little microclimate influence and geographic influence there, what type of grapes grow well. We'll also be discussing what I call the locavore, locapore question. We all like to eat local now. Well, why not drink local? Not every time, but once in a while. And why don't restaurants that say all our ingredients are sourced from farms 100 miles from here, why aren't they featuring at least a few local wines on their lists? And that's an interesting question. It's a perennial question now. It's getting a little bit better around here, but not quite. And then we'll be introducing some of Maryland's new wineries that are coming along and really setting a higher standard for Maryland wine. And then in the afternoon, we do what we call the Twitter Taste-Off. We'll be at Camden Yards for you baseball fans. That's the Baltimore Orioles Stadium. They have an events facility there. And we'll have, we've sold 400 tickets already. We'll have 25 or so Maryland wineries pouring 2 wines each. And it'll be the conventional walk-around tasting, but in the middle of the room we have stations where people can run back to their laptops and quickly type up a tweet and punch out a review. And we'll have a big screen with the reviews with the hashtag MD and DLW13. And it's a lot of fun because you see the reviews instantaneously and people can look up there and say, oh, wow, I got to go across the room and try that wine. last year when we did this in Denver, we actually had people chiming in from Europe saying, gee, I wish I was there. So it does actually get some good impact and some good exposure for the local wines.
That's terrific. All right, so the conference is happening this weekend. Look for it. Go to drinklocalwine.com, and you'll be able to get all of the information there. Dave, thanks so much for being on. Before we let you go, do you want to give us a shout out for one great Maryland wine that you would recommend?
Just one. Well, one of my favorites is Black Ankle Vineyards Crumbling Rock, which is a Bordeaux blend, but they also make a Gruner Veltliner that's terrific, and an Albarino and a Viognier. And then there's Bordy, but there's Bassignani's Lorenzino Reserve, and there's too many.
We get the idea. Well, that's
I can't do this one.
They can watch the tweets, check out the hashtags, just go to drinklocalwine.com. Dave, again, thank you so much for being on the program tonight. We truly appreciate it. Read his columns in the Washington Post, and we can't wait to hear about the success of your event.
And dmwineline.com.
Yes, dmwineline.com. That's your personal blog. That's right. Thank you for giving that plug. Terrific.
All right, thank you.
Well,